It is with great pleasure that I have the honor to introduce our guest lecturer for this session, an educator who has made significant contributions in the field of mathematics and education. Our lecturer today has a doctorate degree in mathematics education from the Philippine Normal University. He obtained his master's degree in teaching mathematics and a certificate in continuing program for teacher education from the Technological University of the Philippines, Manila. He earned his bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Adamson University. At present, Dr. Haji Alegre is the Director of Educational Resource Development Services under the Office of the Vice President for Academic Affairs at PUP. A part-time undergraduate and graduate faculty member of the Mathematics Department, College of Science at the same institution. He also serves as a board member of the Philippine Council of Mathematics Teacher Educators Incorporated, or simply MATED, and the treasurer of the Philippine Institute of Chemical Engineers, Metro Manila East Chapter. Throughout his career, Dr. Alegre had the privilege of serving as a full-time mathematics and research teacher at several institutions, including FEU Alabang, Parañaque Science High School, and Manila Taytana Colleges, and also a part-time faculty member in Olivares College, Rizal Technological University, and MFI Polytechnic Institute Incorporated, or formerly known as Meralco Foundation Institute. His exposure to various academic activities, such as scholastic training of students to different competitions, speaking engagements in trainings and seminars, and research undertakings, earned him a prestigious Consortium of the South Steadfast Top Achiever Resourceful Teacher Award, or the COTS Star Teacher Award. So now we are very fortunate to have him, and I know that this lecture will provide invaluable insights and spark engaging discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Haji C. Alegre.
Actually, this is my first time to enter the premises of the University of Makati. And I'm so overwhelmed with the warm welcome given to me by Dean Tessie Sagadraca, also by the head of the Department of Mathematics and Physics, Professor Di Maunahan, the head of the Department of Natural Science, Dr. Pasquito, also, I would like to commend and at the same time give my heartfelt thanks to the Vice President for Student Services and Community Development, Professor Tabu, and the rest of the Vice Presidents who are currently attending an equally important event. Once again, good morning. Okay, before we start, kindly look at the person to your left. Look at the person to your right. Tell him or her, I am happy you are here. Okay. I would like to know, among the audience, how many of you here are first-time voters in next year's election? Please raise your hands. Wow. Okay, that's why I think the politicians aspiring for a position next year are very aggressive in campaigning because they know that majority of the voters next year are those people who belong to the age group of millennials and Generation X, if I may assume. Okay? And by the way, what I'm going to discuss this morning, like what the Vice President for Research has mentioned, is a very important matter. Not only because all of us here are going to vote next year, but because I want to emphasize the importance of, or the role of mathematics in voting and apportionment. That's why I was able to come up with the topic for today, which is Math Matters. The impact of voting and apportionment in a modern democracy. I'm sure all of us here are aware that what form of government do we have here in the Philippines. And I'm sure also that all of you are aware that USA had their successful elections this year, right? Okay. And we all know that President Trump has successfully won the elections. Although I think it was not really a convincing result because of the gap between the votes of his opponent. However, what I want to emphasize this morning are the three objectives of today's presentation. First, at the end of this talk, I want to illustrate how mathematics influences voting and apportionment. How many of you here are familiar with the term voting? Please raise your hand. Okay, kaya sabi ko lang, boboto tayo next year. Ang iba sa inyo nakaboto na in the previous elections. How many of you are familiar with the term apportionment? Please raise your hand. I think you are all students. Those who raise their hands are students of mathematics in the modern world. Tama ba? Okay. So, this is one of the topics under the mathematics in the modern world. However, please, disclaimer lang, don't expect that I'm going to do the calculations this morning. Okay? Baka kasi iba sa inyo mag-expect that I will do some calculations, which I think will be burdensome for some of you, because I know some of you here, mathematics is not really your cup of tea. Okay? So I would like to emphasize also that in this topic, you will learn to investigate the effects of apportionment techniques and voting methods. And lastly, we will examine how mathematical concepts affect demographic process. Okay, before I begin, I'll give some witty pickup lines, like how Senator Santiago starts her talk. Of course, in relation to elections. Okay. Are you ready? Okay. Para tayong political debate, response, pareho tayong magaling, pero isa lang ang dapat manalo sa puso ko. Next. Tulad ng mga kandidato, gusto ko rin makilala ng pamilya mo. Kasi sa huli, kailangan natin ng suporta. Next. Alam mo ba kung anong pagkakaiba mo sa mga kandidato? Sa'yo, wala akong balak mag-withdraw. And the last, parang balota, ikaw ang nais kong markahan. Sa bawat pagpili ko sa'yo, sigurado, panalo ang pagmamahalan. Okay. So, let us begin with, why does math matter in voting? Alam nyo ba na lahat ng galaw natin sa mundo, there is math in it. So since majority of you are students of MMW, sino nakakaalam na ang DNA natin may kinalaman sa math? Are you familiar with Fibonacci sequence? Okay, do you know that Fibonacci sequence, that DNA has Fibonacci sequence in it? Okay? Isa pa, tingnan niyo yung nakasabit. Di ba may patterns yan? Yan. So actually, kadidiscuss ko lang sa mga estudyante ko ng geometric figures. Okay? So isa yan sa mga topics ng mathematics in the modern world. Similarly, voting has something to do with mathematics. Why? Don't you know that the foundation of democracy or democratic process is mathematics? Alam niyo ba yon? Why? Let's first define voting methods. Voting methods determine how votes translate into political power. Nakakalungkot, pero some of our politicians and aspiring politicians, after the campaign period, pag naupo na, ano mangyayari? Of course, they will have the political power. However, it's the end of the relationship for some. Tama ba? Okay. That's the reality of life. However, that's not what we're going to discuss for today. Second, sa mga hindi nakakaalam ng ano ibig sabihin ng salitang apportionment, apportionment ensures equitable representation for all groups and regions. How many of you are familiar with the voting system in the United States of America? Taas ang kamay. Walang masyado. Okay, bakit sa kanila ang bilis-bilis ma-declare ng panalo? Okay, we're going to have a glimpse of that later on. Okay, because of this term, apportionment. Remember, we are talking of two different terms, voting, apportionment. Okay? And the third, fairness of elections depends on the proper application of mathematical concepts. Sir, ano ibig mo sabihin? We think that there's no fairness in the previous elections. Do you think there's no concept of mathematics applied? Why didn't we have fairness of elections even before? And hopefully, with what you're going to learn today, you will be able to realize the importance of mathematics in attaining fairness of elections, especially in elections 2025. Now, let's have an overview of the voting systems. We have 4 types of voting methods. At hindi lahat ito can be observed in our country. First, are you familiar with the plurality method? Ito yung tinatawag nating first past the post. And what is this? The candidate with the most votes win. Like what happened in USA, like what happened in the case of President BBM, like what happened in the case of VP Sara. They won because they were able to have the most number of votes. Okay? But the side question here is, but the question alongside, rather, is it a convincing win? That's beside the point. Okay? Regardless whether the win is convincing or not, as long as there is a declared winner, and that winner has the majority of the votes, that is being described by the word plurality method. Second, ranked choice voting. Ano namang klaseng voting ito? Voters rank candidates. If no candidate gets a majority, the lowest ranked candidate is eliminated and votes are redistributed. What position, at which position in the government applies the ranked choice voting? Familiar ba kayo sa mga councilors? Right? Diba? Kaya nga merong top 1 councilor, rank 2, rank 3. It's because of the ranked choice voting. Also with the board members. If you are living in the province, ang tawag doon sa mga nag-run under the governor, okay, under the office of the governor, yung mga board members, yung mga probinsya. Third, proportional representation. Seats are allocated in proportion to votes. Now, what are these seats? Are we referring to physical seats? Yes or no? We are referring to positions. Okay? We are referring to position in the government. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng salitang seats. Next, the last one. We have the two-round method. A second round of voting occurs if no candidate achieves a majority. Okay? Now, these are the 4 types of voting methods. Now, the following are the mathematical concepts in voting. I mentioned that mathematics has something to do with voting. At what aspect? When we say voting preferences, by the way, before I define what voting preferences is, may I know, sino na dito ang meron ng listahan ng inyong mga senador for next year's election? Taas ang kamay. Meron ng at least one. One senator. Si Senator Abby ba yan? Si Senator, ano ba yan? Si Camille Villar ba yan? Okay. So, regardless, who he or she is, your voting preference is defined this way. A voting preference is where voters, kayo yon, tayo yon, can rank, rate, or choose candidates in various ways. Next, quotas and thresholds. It teaches us how to decide when a candidate or party reaches enough support to be elected. Okay? And the last one, calculating majority and proportions. That's where mathematics enters. So meron tayong mga voting preferences, meron tayong mga quota or threshold. Saan pumapasok yung math? Math enters in the calculation of the majority and what we call proportions. Di ba a proportion is expressed in terms of what? In various ways. Sino dito makakapagbigay ng one way of expressing a proportion? There are various ways. A proportion can be expressed in the form of it could be a decimal, it could be a percent, but of course, the most common one is what? Ratio or a fraction, right? Okay. Ngayon, when we say calculating majority and proportions, it is the understanding how the total number of votes affect the outcome. Okay. In my talk, I was able to search some surveys. Okay, I was able to look for some surveys. And based on the data, according to Pulse Asia, alam niyo naman yung Pulse Asia, right? Lagi silang nasa eksena every time there is an election or every time there is an important event in our country. Ang sabi nila, based on the survey on 2022, believe it or not, 55% of the Filipinos said that their top priority when voting is electing leaders who can address economic issues. Ganon din ba kayo sa hinahanap ninyong senador? Sa hinahanap ninyong mayor? Sa hinahanap ninyong vice mayor? You are looking for someone who is a godlike structure, who is a godlike creator, who can, what? Babangon sa atin sa laylayan? Ganon ba tayo maghanap ng ating mga iboboto? Or iboboto natin ang isang kandidato is because the person is handsome, the person is beautiful, the person is rich, the person has a good integrity, okay? Or a person has a good family background. Is it the one that you're looking for? Dahil ba artista siya? Dahil ba siya ay isang pangkaraniwang tao? Okay, however, based on the surveys, and I'm happy about this one, although medyo maliit pa rin siya, that 55% of the Filipinos are looking for leaders who can address economic issues. Dapat naman. Okay? However, in the voter turnout, in the same year, the Philippines had a voter turnout of 80.38%. Sino dito yung mga bumoto nung year 2022? Taas ang kamay. Okay. Halata po yung mga edad natin dito. Okay, if you belong to the list of voters who voted in the year 2022, let us congratulate ourselves because we belong to the 80.38% of those voters who actively voted during the elections in the year 2022. Okay? How about in the global context? So when we talk about global, then one thing comes to mind, one country comes to mind, which is the United States of America. And of course, gusto natin makapunta ng Amerika. Okay? That's why, in the 2024, kung meron silang Pulse Asia, kung meron tayong Pulse Asia, meron silang tinatawag na Pew Research. Or I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Poe or Pew? Pew Research Center survey, and it was found out just this year that half of Americans say they generally find it difficult to determine what is true and what is not when getting news about the election. Did you see the similarity between Philippines and the United States of America? Okay, kaya lang, medyo mas, alam niyo mga Filipinos, despite of the odds, despite of the challenges, we are very positive thinkers. Diba? Despite of the bagyo, despite of the earthquake, despite of the tsunami, Filipinos are always looking at the brighter side of all these challenges. Unlike the Americans, diba alam naman natin yung mga Caucasians, Americans, hindi sila yung katulad natin mga Pilipino that they're always positive. Diba? Hindi ganoon ng mga Americans. That's why they are very straightforward to say that 52% of them say they find it difficult to determine what is true, which is, nakakalungkot, no? And what is not when getting news about the election. Okay. Now, that's about voting. How about the next one? Apportionment. What is apportionment? Apportionment is a technique of determining how many representatives or seats of each area or group gets based on population. So apportionment is a technique. Now, examples of apportionment are the following. First, we have equal proportion. Ano ibig sabihin ng equal proportion? Every representative represents approximately the same number of people. In the United States, bawat isang state, merong kanya-kanyang representative. Alabama, New York, okay, Virgin Islands, Alaska, whatever it is, they have their own representatives. Okay? And they have the same number of people per state. Next, ano naman yung the irony of equal population is mal-apportionment. Ang ibig sabihin naman nito, when districts have an equal populations, some voters carry more weight than the others. Yung equal population, depending on how many proportions are there are same number of representatives. Pag mal-apportionment, kung ilan yung proportions mo, they don't have the same number of representatives. Let's watch this video.
The Constitution requires that we take a census every 10 years to count every person living in the United States. Why is the census so important? One reason is apportionment, the process of calculating how many seats each state gets in the U.S. House of Representatives. But how does apportionment work? Since 1940, a formula known as the method of equal proportions has been used to determine how many seats in the House of Representatives each of the 50 states receives. The U.S. House of Representatives has 435 seats, and each state must get at least one seat. So after the first 50 seats are distributed, the formula is used to distribute the other 385 seats. The formula is used to calculate values that are based on each state's total population and the number of potential seats each state could receive. Then those values are ranked to determine how many additional seats each state will get. This process ensures that each congressional district, from Alaska to Florida and California to Maine, has roughly the same number of people to represent. Since the first census in 1790, the decennial count has been the basis for our representative form of government. Back then, each House member represented about 34,000 people. Today, each member represents more than 700,000 people. Every census is a new snapshot of our nation, and every person must be represented. And as our country continues to grow in size and diversity, the apportionment process ensures equal representation for all, no matter who you are or where you live. The census is more than just a population count. It's an essential element of our nation's democracy, with the power to shape our future for years.
Okay, so do you see how apportionment applies to the U.S. Election process? Okay, I hope that you already have an idea how apportionment is applied in the United States of America. So how about the mathematics of apportionment? There are different techniques in apportionment, which applies mathematics. Okay, however, like what I said, I'm not going to show the calculations here. I will just give you a preview what these techniques are all about. First is the most common one, the Hamilton method. Ano ba yung Hamilton method? Ang sabi dito, it uses fractional allocation based on the population. So it's a fraction where the denominator is always the population. Second, the Jefferson method. What is this? It focuses on favoring larger districts because in the states, there are larger districts while there are smaller districts. Okay, next. The Webster method. It uses the square root of population to balance the allocation. Okay? Kinukuha yung square root ng bawat population of each state. And the last one, the Huntington-Hill method. It is a weighted average approach that is commonly used in the U.S. Congress. So the more population, the higher the weight. Alam niyo ba yung weight? Yung weight expressed in decimal or percent. Basta pag tinota lahat ng weights, it is equal to what? Pag tinota lahat ng weights, anyone? What is the total? Okay, very good, 100% or 1 in decimal. Okay. So, if you think that apportionment applies only to the United States of America, apportionment also is applied here in the Philippines. And these are some case studies. In 2022, the Philippines had 318 legislative districts in the House of Representatives, at which a portion of these 318 goes to where? Halimbawa, ACT, anong tawag nyo doon? Party list. Okay, so ang Congress natin binubuo ng regular representatives with the party list representatives. Are you familiar with that? Okay. The Constitution mandates that every province and every city with a population of 250,000 must have at least one representative. Okay, hindi ba kayo nagtataka merong sinasabing lone representative? Di ba may ganun term? Bakit may representative na there is one representative for two joint cities or two joint places? Kasi ang sabi dito, our Constitution mandates that there is one representative for every 250,000 number of residents in a city or municipality. Okay? So there's math in it. Now, in apportionment, there is disadvantage. Okay? Ano ang disadvantage? Unequal representation in some districts due to population shifts and the concentration of voters in urban areas. I've read one article, news article, parang last week yata yun, wherein Senator Binay, Nancy Binay yata yun, nabasa niyo ba yung news na yun? Nagtataka siya bakit ang daming voters na lumilipat ba? If I'm not mistaken. Nabasa niyo ba yung balitang yun? I think hindi naman siya fake news kasi sa isang legit na isang news site ko siya nakita na merong mga nagta-transfer na residents. I don't know if it's from Makati out or outside Makati papunta ng Makati. Okay? So, doon pumapasok yung challenges if there are population shifts or there are changes in terms of the number of residents. Okay? The challenge of balancing representation for geographically large or comparatively populated regions. In Cavite, okay, where I am residing, I don't know if you have heard the news na medyo maraming resettlement areas na nasusunog in Cavite because they are being transferred from one place to another place, but within Cavite also. Why? One of the programs of the government is the expansion of the LRT. Okay, kaya yung mga nakatira dun sa mga shore, okay, narinig niyo ba yung balita ngayon? Yung mga nakatira malapit dun sa Bay Area, okay, nasunog yung kanilang mga bahay. I don't know if it's what happened there. But one reason daw, okay, sabi lang ng mga tao, bulong-bulungan, is because of the expansion of the LRT. So, syempre, yung mga residents na bumoboto dun sa lugar na yon, what they need to do is to transfer to another area. So, nababawasan yung boto dun sa place na yon na pupunta ng ibang cities of Cavite and municipalities of Cavite. Okay? And some were also transferred in Laguna. Okay? So, yun yung mga challenges in apportionment. However, in the data from Pulse Asia, again, in the year 2022, this is a public opinion on representation or apportionment. Anong sabi dito? Over 60% of Filipinos express that they feel certain regions are underrepresented in Congress, especially rural areas. Sino dito yung mga nakatira sa rural areas originally? Taas ang kamay. So, lahat kayo okay. Meron ba kayong ganong feeling that your region is underrepresented in the Congress? Maybe, Iha, can I hear? May I hear your opinion? Why? Yes. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Charissa, so I'm from Institute of Nursing. So I came from the province of Negros Occidental. So I can say that it's somehow underrepresented because kung titingnan niyo po, galing pa ako doon, bakit ako pupunta dito? The first thing is the lack of educational funds and something. Kasi sa amin po, yung mga schools na nag-cater ng scholarship, especially for the field of medicine, is 2 lang po. And it's like, need mo pong sumakay ng barko para makapunta sa school na yon. And yung isa, magta-travel ka pa ng 6 hours from land. So, doon pa lang po, feeling namin, kulang po kami sa representative, especially po sa mga scholarships. We really lack a lot of funds there when it comes to education. And even po sa medicine, I think marami po sa amin yung mga hindi nakakakuha na ng mga bakuna, especially for kids. And really, para po sa akin, talaga siya, when it comes to education, parang hindi po siya masyadong nabibigyan ng pansin kasi marami po sa amin nang tumitigil na lang sa pag-aaral and they choose to work like, sa sugar canes na lang po or nagko-construction kasi hindi po nila afford yung college even though may mga universities naman po, like state universities, but yung expenses po na tinatawag natin, kahit po sana like mag-provide na lang sila ng allowance or free po na boarding house para sa mga students. Ang kaso po, hindi po siya napapansin and hindi po siya nababanggit. Kaya medyo nanghihinayang pa ako na sa cities, mas madaming privilege. Bakit doon po sa amin, parang kakaunti lang po?
Okay, thank you very much. Wow, mabuhay ang College of Nursing. How I wish that we have present with us here some politicians so that they will hear what these people are saying. Okay, nevertheless, it just shows that apportionment is sometimes not applied. How I wish that apportionment applies equally to all cities and municipalities in the Philippines. Huwag na tayong lumabas ng Pilipinas, dito na lang sa Pilipinas. But mathematics says that sometimes apportionment is not applied due to unequal representation. Okay? Yun lang. It's a simple application of mathematics already. Okay. So, what are the recommendations? Because of that underrepresentation, the recommendation is to better balance the representation and make apportionment more representative of the actual population. Okay? Of course, with the irregularities in voting and apportionment, we want to achieve fairness and equity. Okay. How? Let us show the different concepts of fairness. Do you believe in one person, one vote? Thumbs up if you agree. One person, one vote? Or gusto niyo bang mag-flying voter? One person, one vote, which states that the principle that each person's vote should carry equal weight. Tama ba yon? Okay. That's why your vote matters. Next, equity in representation. We have to ensure all groups, minorities, mga tribes, yung mga those who are living in the rural, those who are living in the urban areas are fairly represented. Regardless of size. Don't take this literally. I'm not talking about underweight, overweight. Pag sinabing regardless of size, regardless of the number of residents in a particular area or location. Now, how are we going to achieve fairness? Only mathematics can help us ensure that there is fairness and equity. In what sense? We have to ensure that election power is fairly distributed and that voting systems reflect changes in population. Kung napanood na ninyo yung balota, okay, it's a very good movie. Nire-relate ko siya dito. How powerful ballots are, how powerful our votes are as one nation. Okay? At alam kong pinakita natin yan in the previous events, like what happened in yung bayanihan. Okay? Di ba pag sinabi nung isang aspiring singer, iboto nyo ako, kasi yung PBB na lang, yung nakaraang PBB, di ba, botohan yon? So that's how powerful votes are. Di ba? Yung sa tingin nyo hindi dapat manalo, nananalo. Okay? That's how powerful votes are. In the same aspect, in our politicians, if you believe that your politician or the one you are looking for in a candidate should really sit in the power of Malacanang, should really sit in the power of the city hall, should really sit in the power of municipal halls, then you have to exercise equity and fairness. And this very timely because magkakaroon na naman ng consultations with Smartmatic. Okay? I don't know if they will still be the one to provide the technology for this coming election. Kung Smartmatic pa rin ba? Of course, there are ongoing negotiations. However, We have to be familiar with the advancements in voting technology. The one that we applied in the previous election here in the Philippines and even the United States, ang tawag dyan ay electronic voting, which provides faster, more accurate vote counting. Okay? Patawarin na natin ang Smartmatic kung medyo sumablay in the previous elections. Okay? Yung mga failure to read the SIM cards, yung mga technicalities, yung mga ganon. Next, the blockchain voting. It provides a secure and transparent voting system. And the last one is the data analytics. It is used to predict outcomes and analyze the voter behavior. When it comes to the power of technology in voting, please watch this video.
Can electronic voting systems make elections more secure and transparent? Definitely. Robust electronic voting systems combine multiple layers of security and control mechanisms that guarantee the integrity and confidentiality of the information that is generated throughout the election process. And they also provide the necessary tools to audit results and validate their legitimacy. Let's dig a little deeper. To understand the security of well-designed electronic voting systems, it's important to always keep in mind one word: system. Voting machines, often the subject of much contention, do not work alone. Together with consolidation servers, configuration systems, and many other elements, they form a unified whole. Good systems are designed so that their different elements validate and protect each other. And this is precisely what Smartmatic engineers managed to achieve. Encryption is a fundamental concept in election data protection. It protects the confidentiality of the data by making it unreadable to unauthorized users. Absolutely all the information stored in the system must be encrypted. Every component of the system must have a unique digital certificate. Thanks to these certificates, the different elements of the system can know whether or not they are interacting with a legitimate element of the same system. By combining digital signatures and asymmetrical keys, the system allows authorities to validate that the applications running the platform and the data generated throughout the election remained unaltered. In other words, they protect data integrity and legitimacy. Security keys play a crucial role in safeguarding election data. Each device should have a unique set of security keys to safeguard the privileged information that it stores. And certain repositories may even have key splitting. This means that the keys are split into several parts, and only when all parties involved agree to unite their unique part of the key can the data be accessed. For added protection, voting machines should be air-gapped. This basically means that they are disconnected from the outer world. Only when voting is over do they connect for a few seconds to transmit information. All the encrypted and digitally signed data must travel through secured channels. Multiple layers of protection can be added to reinforce the security of the transmission. Throughout the election, well-designed electronic voting systems normally produce multiple copies of every data point. Distributed data storage generate rich audit trails. Authorities can always go back to review the audit trail and validate the legitimacy and integrity of the information. Voting systems should always generate a paper trail. Physical copies of votes, tallying reports, and other election milestones allow everyone, even those who are careless about technology, to verify that results are legitimate. So yes, electronic voting systems can increase election security and transparency. Contact us, and we will be glad to help you protect your elections.
One word that starts with letter E, which was also discussed in MMW, was mentioned. And Marisip? Encryption. Encryption is one method that works especially in the technology used in elections, which is being used in Smartmatic as well as other providers. So nakita nyo kung paano ginagamit ang technology to ensure the safety and at the same time in order to achieve fairness and equality and equity in elections. Okay. So, the impact of voting systems on election outcomes enables us to ask how different systems affect the results. First, we have plurality versus proportional representation. Okay? And how are they different? Different systems lead to different kinds of political outcomes. For example, in the 2022 Philippine elections, use the plurality method which benefited large popular parties. But there are calls for reform. Okay? And aside from this calls for reform, as responsible citizens of the country, and I know that all of you have lots to say about the current election system. So bago pa mahuli ang lahat, we have to speak up. Okay? As members of, as millennials rather, as Generation X, mga boomers, especially mga millennials natin, you have to speak up. There are calls for reform such as experts call for introducing more apportionment techniques to ensure fairer representation. Pero kailangan pa ba talaga nito? If individuals can only exercise proper mentality when it comes to voting, I don't think there is a need for more apportionment techniques. Okay? For more apportionment techniques. Because if Filipinos are very responsible enough, I don't think that there will be a need for more apportionment methods. The need for inclusive and accessible voting systems to ensure higher turnout and better representation. So with this, the following are the key takeaways or the key points from today's discussion on voting and apportionment. Number one, we have learned that voting and apportionment systems directly affect political outcomes. Number two, math is essential for ensuring fairness and equity in democratic processes. And the last, many individuals believe that reforms are required to improve the democratic process according to recent studies conducted in the Philippines and around the world. Understanding the mathematical foundations of voting and representation helps us become more informed, responsible citizens. That's the reason why I came up with this topic. It's because I want you to be aware, I want you to be prepared, and I want you to be responsible voters in the year 2025 elections. So with that, let us watch this very important video in order to bridge us from this topic to the next topic on climate change.
Democracy, as in one man, one vote, is regarded as being the type of government to aspire to. However, it has its problems. The public do not necessarily possess any particular collective wisdom, and there's a danger of trial by plebiscite over topical or emotive issues if policy is based on popular opinion. If people are asked on the street what sort of environmental problem they consider most important, they are more likely to answer litter rather than global warming, because the problem of litter is immediate and in front of them, whereas climate change is something perceived as being out of their control and external. But the main problem is that a democratic approach to decision-making can create logically inconsistent results, as we're going to demonstrate here today. This inherent difficulty with democracy was elegantly demonstrated using set theory by the Nobel Prize-winning economist Ken Arrow, and is now known as Arrow impossibility. In its simplest form, it can be represented by three people. Let's call them James, Simon and Mary, who each rank three preferences, A, B and C, in an order 1, 2 or 3. Each person ranks their preferences in a different order. This simulates the wide difference of opinion that might be found amongst the general public. The trick is to look at the ranking order of the preferences chosen by each person. Don't add up the numbers, it's the ranking that we need to compare. how many people prefer option A to option B? By looking at the table, you can see that 2 people have this ranking. 2 out of 3 people means that a majority have this preference. Then have a look and see how many people prefer option B to option C. As before, 2 people prefer this ranking, so again a majority. So it logically follows that the majority of our community of 3 people prefer option A to option C, as the majority prefer both A to B and B to C. However, here comes the paradox. If you look at the number of people who rank their preference for option C above option A, then it is again a majority. So we have the majority preferring both A to C and C to A, which is of course quite impossible. If you want to know more about the types of principles that can be applied to dealing with the problems of aggregating social preferences, join us on the Environmental Challenges program.
So I hope you see the connection between our topic, voting and apportionment, okay, to the next topic on climate change. So with that, I would like to end with a thought. Voting should be driven by the greater good of the country rather than party loyalty or personal gain. Vote with integrity for the betterment of the nation. I remember, since I came from a Christian school when I was in elementary, I remember Colossians 3:23 as our life verse before we graduated from elementary. And until now, I remember this verse, which I use in my life. Colossians 3:23, and whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not unto men. Thank you very much.
Again, a round of applause for Dr. Alegre. Thank you so much, Dr. Alegre, for breaking down such a complex topic, math and democracy. At first, they might not seem closely related, but as we saw today, they're actually deeply connected in ways that we don't realize. From tallying our votes to ensuring fair representation, it's really all about numbers and how they reflect the will of the people. Students, with the elections around the corner next year, this is something we should pay attention to. So again, thank you so much, Doc. Now, the floor is open for questions and insights. To facilitate this, we have Dr. Susan C. Guevara and Dr. Lolita G. Musa, who will guide our Q&A session. Doc? And for those who have questions, kindly write your question on a piece of paper along with your name, section, and college. And due to time constraints, we can only accommodate four questions.
Yes, sir.
Hello po.
Hello po.
I'm JR Glate from Center for Integrated Communications. Actually, I'm also a tech po sa event na to. No, while I'm listening to your talk po, we are educated on what is apportionment and such. May tanong po ako. With regards po dito sa electoral system po dito sa Philippines, applicable po ba yung sa US na ginagawa like yung popularity and electoral votes. Kasi I understand po na popularity po dito sa Philippines based sa population. Doon po sa US is electoral representation ng bawat states. Regardless po ba sa system of the government na we have, it is also ba applicable po dito sa atin sa Philippines?
Thank you
Yun
very
lang po.
much. Sabi nga ng mga sumama, thank you very much for that wonderful question. Yes, sir. I was about to say that USA and Philippines have different forms of government. That's why we have to consider that aspect when it comes to answering that question. But you have mentioned that regardless of the form of government. So you're asking for popular versus electoral. Okay. In the United States. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But there are certain components that have to be considered. Before we apply what is applied in the United States here in the Philippines, we have to consider malaking bagay, sir. Actually, in mathematics education, one aspect that is being studied now in the component of mathematics education, surprisingly, is culture. Okay, the ethnomathematics itself, as well as the culture. Isa yan sa tinitingnang angulo ngayon when it comes to researches in mathematics nowadays. So that's one thing that's one of the things that we have to consider, the culture of our country compared to the US. Second is siguro yung availability of resources. That's one aspect as well. How will you compare a third world country with a first world country? That's one of the limitations, I think, that would hinder us from doing such method, if I may say it's a method or technique. And a lot of factors, just for time constraint. Okay, but it's possible. If there's a will, there's a way. I believe in that saying. As long as our politicians have the will. But first, let's give the Comelec the benefit of the doubt. Kumbaga, if they have the will, lagi namang ganun, it's possible. And it depends also on the willpower of the government to introduce changes, positive changes in the government. And let's not forget that behind all of this, whether it is popular or the electoral something, there is always mathematics behind it. And that's also one thing to be considered. But are we ready for it? Is the Philippines ready for it? Yes, I think so. Of course, with the help of young people like you should be able to speak up, speak your mind. Okay? Based on what you have learned from today's topic, if you think that what you have learned for today should be applied, if not in next year's election, then probably in our future elections, why not? Thank you. Yes.
Good morning po.
Good morning.
I am Sofia Bianca Villasis po from 1A Psych. And I have a question lang po. What mathematical tools can be used to safeguard election integrity and prevent voting manipulation or errors in vote counting po since may election na po next?
Okay, I have presented the different voting methods, diba? As well as the different apportionment methods. So in my opinion, and also based on the formula presented, I prefer the Hamilton method. Yes. I have no time for you to discuss it. How is it used by showing calculations? But if you would like to know more about it, you can send me a message in my messenger account. I'm willing to discuss it with you. That's on a personal basis. Yes.
Good morning po.
Good morning.
Defi Jaime po from 1A Psychology din po. Yung tanong,
Psychology.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes po. Yung tanong ko po, what role does mathematics play in determining how yung voting districts are drawn and how are these decisions made?
Sorry, what's the first part again?
Ayun po. what role does mathematics play in determining how voting districts are drawn? Yung apportionment mo na nabanggit mo. And how are these decisions made po?
Okay, with the, of course, although it was not mentioned here in the discussion, due to time constraint, the presentation of the formulas, that's one thing that you have to be familiar first. The formulas of different techniques, so that you will know, if you already know the background of these formulas, then definitely you will have already an idea how mathematics plays an important role in today's election and voting and apportionment. Aside from those mentioned, I presented to you some results of survey, right? And based on the survey, it was shown in the survey how vital, how essential the application of mathematics is in voting and apportionment. And I have emphasized in my presentation that voting, that the outcomes of our elections can only be attained. Fairness and equity can only be attained if we're able to apply proper mathematics, correct mathematics. Yeah. Yeah, similar to her, if you want to discuss it further, pwede tayo mag-exchange of messages. I can form a group chat out of this. Okay? So that there will be exchange of ideas between me and, of course, the audience who are present here today. Because we only have limited time. So, yon. I will just coordinate with the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Thank you.
Great morning po, Mr.
Good morning.
Dr. Alegre po. I am Renbic Louis Cortez from the Institute of Nursing, a level 1 student. And I would like to give some insights for you po. And I really appreciate for this opportunity for this talk. And you really provided some great insights about how votation really matters, including with math. Now, I was wondering, since we are now in a modern technology world, and my main question is, how can AI be integrated in electoral fairness, and how accurate the representation of diverse populations, since you mentioned that some part of the Philippines are underrepresented? So that is my main question for you po. Thank you po.
Thank you very much. I believe that Smartmatic is also working on that aspect, the integration of AI in the technology. If we are going to adopt Smartmatic again, I don't know, although there are ongoing negotiations between the COMELEC and the government, and the provider rather. Of course, we know AI has its advantages and disadvantages. And we have to use the advantage of AI, especially nowadays in preparation for the upcoming elections. I believe in the power of AI. Okay? So in that aspect, AI plays a vital tool in ensuring, first, that the outcomes of the elections will be fair and equal. But of course, we cannot remove the fact that there are also external forces that will not make us certain, or that will not make us assured that the results of the upcoming elections will be fair and equal. Let's accept that reality. Okay? Kasi di ba, there are forces of evil around us. If I may call it forces of evil. Since we are living in a world that is not purely, hindi naman lahat ng tao, di ba, pare-pareho ng level of thinking. But with regard to your question, I agree with you that AI should play its role, okay, especially in making the Filipinos ready for the next elections. And part of these preparations is, of course, preparing our technology, preparing the technology that will be used in the upcoming elections. As regards to what extent, I don't know. I'm not an AI expert, but I know how can we maximize the use of AI, not only in terms of elections, but also in terms of research, in terms of teaching. And I hope that the use of AI should start from the university. Okay? I believe that the president of this university should invest in AI, maximize its use, maximize its advantage, and it must be supported very well by the faculty members of the University of Makati. Thank you very much.
Thank you po.
Well, very active ang College of Nursing. Wow.
Good morning po.
Yes.
I am Chloe from the Institute of Nursing. And my question is, how does the concept of one person, one vote manifest in different voting systems? And how can mathematical methods help identify potential inequalities in representation?
One person, one vote. Ano yung second to the last part of the question?
How can mathematical methods help identify potential inequalities in representation?
Of course, math itself cannot do its part in guarding the votes. But mathematics itself, the knowledge of mathematics can enable us to think critically. Of course, as voters in the upcoming elections, part of the application of mathematics is exercising it through critical thinking. Now that we already know what these methods are, now that we already know what these formulas are, and with these formulas and what these techniques are all about, then I believe that the critical thinking should come from the person himself or herself. In that manner, the application of one vote, one person can only be possible if we ourselves are knowledgeable of these mathematical concepts. That's where it begins. But beyond that, it's already beyond our control. Okay, even the president himself cannot control that. Okay, only God himself can control that. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Active na active yung mga College of Nursing. I know that. I came from Manila Titana Colleges. So alam kong active na active mga nursing students.
Again, a big thank you to Dr. Allegra for being so generous po with your answers. And also, thank you to Dr. Musa, Dr. Guevara, and all the students who asked such great questions.